And hello, everybody. This is Rita Cosby, host here on 77 WABC. Welcome to our fantastic Back the Blue Day and our fantastic roundtable honoring our great men and women in law enforcement and the incredible work that they do. We have been honoring them all day long, and we also want to thank our sponsor, Ramsey Mazda, because together with them and 77 WABC, we stand with the heroes that are out there on the front lines. I think about how right now the job with law enforcement has never been more difficult. Some of the new figures, 281 officers shot this year alone. 55 have been killed. We have to stop this, and that's why we are here today to back the blue. We have an incredible panel with some of the best in law enforcement, but I first want to bring in our great owner and operator here of Red Apple Media, along with John and Margot Katsimatidis. That is the true team at the helm here of this great station. And John has been an enormous supporter of our men and women in blue. John, thank you very much.
Well, I'm just going to keep it short. The fact is, we support the men in blue. I grew up in Harlem. And when we dial 911, we want the men in blue to come. I don't understand who else, what else, the 8.5 million New Yorkers, what else would they ask for? I mean, there's a culture growing out there that is trying to say, defund the police. I don't know who they are. Because from where I'm at, and the minorities in our city, the Asian population, the Hispanic population, the black population, when you ask them, and I ask everybody to go with me, walk through Harlem, walk through Asian neighborhoods, walk through Hispanic neighborhoods. You know what they all say? When they dial 911, they want the police to come. So who is putting out this stuff, defund the police? Who is putting out this stuff? They want to ruin our city. I love our city. 8.5 million people in our city. Another 4 million people between Nassau County and Suffolk County. So you got 12.5 million people. And all we're asking for, I don't want to complain about taxes. I don't want to complain about anything. I just want to say is, for whom do the bells toll? When I had the police commissioner on my show, she says there are 3,000 violent criminals, repeat violent criminals, not violent criminals that did it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. So whom does Albany want to support? The 12.5 million people, the 20 million people in our state, or the 3,000 violent criminals? Rita, I just don't understand it.
Well, thank you for all you do, John, and for voicing it out. In fact, Keyshawn Sewell, NYPD chief, talked about repeat offenders and bail reform today. So powerful. And we want to get into all you do also for law enforcement with the PAL and the Federal Law Enforcement Foundation. We're joined, by the way, everybody, today with an amazing panel here on 77 WABC, Ramsey Mazda, Back the Blue Day. We've got Bo Deedle over here, our former NYPD detective, also host of One Tough Podcast, and a veteran of law enforcement and great supporter. Also, we have Sheriff Errol Tulin and Sheriff of Suffolk County. Also, you were head of Rikers for many, many years. And really an honor to have you with us here too, sir. And we can't wait to hear your thoughts. And also joining us, we have John DeVito, Special Agent in charge of the ATF in New York. So important about guns and frontline on the war on crime. Thank you very, very much. And by your side is Eve Hendricks, who knows the price, unfortunately, of crime all too well, losing her precious, beautiful son, Brandon, at a barbecue, and so eloquently now speaking up for victims of crime everywhere. We are so honored to have you here, Eve. Thank you very much, everybody. Let me start with you, actually, Eve, if I could, because take us back to the day of what happened with Brandon, and now your message about how important it is to support our law enforcement. You've been there, and we just feel your pain, and we feel also your appreciation of the men and women in blue.
Thank you. On I will say June 28th, that was a Sunday. Brendan and we got up. He cleaned his room. I did laundry. I made him lunch, hamburgers. We had church service online. And he said, Mom, I'm going to a barbecue. During the day, we text a lot. We spoke a lot. We always say, I love you. Never hang up. Just call just to say, I love you just because I just love you. And then there was a point when I just could not hear from him. But I just said, he's a child, he's a boy, 17. Probably meet a girl, something. He's at a barbecue. And then around 12 something, one of his friends' mother called me. And I found it strange because she has never called that late. It was midnight going to morning. And she said, Eve, Brennan got shot. And I thought it was a joke. I started to run. I was in the traffic. I was running towards cars. All I was thinking about is Brendan. Not Brendan. It's still. Anyway, we found out what hospital Brendan was in. He was at St. Barnabas. His friend says, they call me Ma. I said, Ma, he got shot, but he's going to be okay. They were shooting and we were running and Brendan got shot. And when I went to the hospital, I saw all his friends and I just knew something was wrong. But I was hoping to see Brendan on a bed, on a stretcher, smiling because he always smiled. So I could hug him and kiss him and tell him it's going to be okay. But instead, they took me to this room and I saw this bag. And I've never imagined all in my life I would do this. And I unzipped that bag and it was Brendan's face. His body was still warm. It was Brendan's face. And that image have not left me. That image have not left me. No one, no mother, family member, whatever you are, should have to unzip a bag and see a child face. Your good child face, obedient, did everything right, just graduated, was on his way for college, did not get married, just a good son, just wanted to go to a barbecue. I believe on June 29th, at the time my son got shot, if there were police officers there in the community, chances are it would still be here. Because no one is going to pull out a gun just because, they're going to be scared because they get caught. And that's why I am for police. They do protect our street. They are human also, but they do protect the streets. In every organization, there's good and bad. But let's not focus on the bad and think about the good. People are scared to take the subway because if there are no police there, that's what people, oh God, there's no police on the subway. There's none. They're scared. We want to see them out there.
Thank you for sharing that story.
Thank you.
And we feel so emotional, all of us. I don't think there's a dry eye on this panel right now and everybody watching because your suffering is so real and it's so amazing what a tribute you have done to your son
Thank you
to
so
now
much.
help so many other people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor to
Did
have
they
you
ever
here.
catch the killer?
Yes,
Yeah.
they did.
They did catch the killer. John was
Yes.
asking.
Yes.
And it was just somebody in the neighborhood, or was it?
It's not our neighborhood. It's someone from that neighborhood. I heard he was playing dice before, and he lost, I guess, and he saw those people in the crowd, and he decided to start shooting. There were babies, elderlies, kids. It's a barbecue, so we do need these guns off the street. We do need these guns off the street.
And we need police officers there also
We
to
need
protect
police
us, as you were
officers. We
saying.
need the bail reform to be fined, and we need murderers to stay in jail. Hardcore criminals deserve to stay in jail. No bail reformed. They're coming out and finishing what they started, but they're killing innocent children. They are shooting the wrong people.
1,000%. John, you see these cases, sadly, all too often. And you know what an incredible advocate Eve has been now for so many families. I mean, we just admire your courage so much, Eve. Talk about how often you are seeing this and how important it is, as she so eloquently said, better than I think anybody could say, about recidivism, about what's happening with bail reform, how it's important to send a message to criminals that are shooting up at a barbecue that they can't do it again. You know, you've got to break that cycle. I think about Bill Bratton and the broken window cycle.
Well, the three fundamental concepts of the criminal justice system, first of all, is to incapacitate the criminal activity, means stop the activity. So one of the things I work on quite religiously here, and Eve and I share a very similar life. I lost my mother to violent gun crime 33 years ago. So from that time, when I was 15 years old to present, my entire world has been revolving around violent gun crime. It's all I know, all I deal with. And identifying that small percentage of the criminal population are actually driving violent crimes in our communities is our number one issue. And once they're identified, focusing on investigative resources and partnerships to remove them from the shooting cycle. Today's victim is tomorrow's shooter and vice versa. So once law enforcement has the ability to identify those individuals and prosecute them and keep them out of the equation, we're going to reduce violent gun crime. Right now we're very limited by being able to incapacitate that shooting cycle and stop it. Once you incapacitate it, you hold them accountable, show them that the criminal activity is prohibited and they can't do it anymore, and then move on to rehabilitation. Those are the three fundamental pillars of our criminal justice process here in the United States. And unfortunately, when you take out one of the legs of the stool, the entire system starts breaking down. We have to be able to stop this recidivism and take these violent people off the street, at least for a period of time. Because again, at the end of the day, we have to be able to stop that shooting cycle so we don't continue this violent activity on a daily basis. And the only way we can do that is by having a system that's fully functioning.
1,000%. And as you talk about all the legs, Sheriff Toulon, you were at Rikers for a long time. Sadly, there was an attack on a Rikers guard just the other day, stabbed 15 times. Talk about how important it is, what John is talking about, to make our streets safer for everybody, to break this cycle. You've seen the worst of them.
Right, and one of the things that I really think about is the judge's discretion. We have to give the judges that discretion to look at a criminal history and determine whether that person should be incarcerated or returning back to the streets. 85% of the men and women that are incarcerated in Suffolk County will be eventually returning back to the community. 15% will be going to state prison. We have to do a better job identifying those men and women because, as Eve pointed out, this legislation does not consider the victims. This legislation does not consider the law enforcement personnel that are out there on the streets every single day. You have identified 281 members of service that have been shot, 55 that have been killed. How many have been shot at and not killed or not hit are the things that we should also be looking at, because why these individuals have the brazenness to shoot their firearm at a law enforcement person. And so, housing them on Rikers Island, Suffolk County, or Nassau County is extremely important because you can start that rehabilitation for most individuals inside of a correctional setting. If not, they're just returning back to the same community, to the same vices, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, whatever those issues may be, right back to our community, reoffending, and the cycle continues with a new victim and new law enforcement person that has to use their resources to rearrest someone.
Are you seeing also criminals more brazen too? We are all seeing so many more of these random attacks. And it seems like it's happening. We've been talking about it on, obviously, at Cats at Night and all the other great shows here on 77 WABC. There are so many of these random, just they seem emboldened these days. Do you feel that too?
Not only emboldened, but what we see on the streets, because I have deputy sheriffs on the road, but also we have had more violence over the last 2 years inside of our jails because of certain legislations that have been passed. And, you know, clearly, if those individuals have not met that criteria to return back to the community and they're incarcerated, our correction officers are now faced with a new risk because of the issues these men and women are faced with.
Which is just so tough because they're there to protect all of us and to protect the worst of the worst and make sure that they do get the rehabilitation, but that cycle that you so eloquently talked about, John, gets broken. Bo, how important is it, and John always talks about this so powerfully, I think, on a show, about law and order. How important is it to elect and have people at the top of the ballot, well, right away from an election, to have people who put law and order on the ballot?
First of all, Eve, my heart really goes out to you. You're an eloquent speaker, and you said it all as far as I'm concerned. It's just funny that I've been talking with John, the head of the ATF, and this morning I've been communicating with the mayor and also the first deputy mayor, Philip Banks. We have an initiative that's on the books. They're not being prosecuted in New York State, but guess what? There's a federal crime on the books, a federal law, where we could prosecute anyone with a loaded gun who's a convicted felon federally, and they'll go away for at least 10 years. They won't be coming out. And this is something I'm going to be working with John, with our mayor and our first deputy. As far as that goes, there are laws that we have to, if the state and if the DAs and the judges don't want to do it, we'll federally prosecute them. We'll let the word go out there. You get caught with an illegal gun, you're going away from 10 to 15 years. That's what we got to do. The law is on the books. We got to use it. And there was one more thing that I'm here today for. I picked up the Post this morning. 23 cop killers have been released by this joke of a parole board. Used to be, when I came on the force in 1970, we had an electric chair, and that went by the wayside. Then we were going to be life without parole. That's gone. And this morning I read my friend Bobby Bilodeau. He was in street crime with me, winner of 2 Medal of Honors. Was shot dead the night I responded up there at 123rd Street and 8th Avenue. He was killed up there. His killer was just let go. 23 cop killers were let go. Now they want to even suspend the parole board more so. Where are we going to stop this? Now all of a sudden that young boy in Jamaica, I'll never forget, young Burns, I think he was 21 years old, in 1988. He was shot in the car. He was guarding a witness. He was assassinated. Now they want to let those 2 people out of jail. When are we going to stop? You kill a cop, you should never see the sun rise again. There's no rehabilitation for a cop killer. That's what I feel about it.
Sheriff, also, I want to get your take on the fact that a lot of law enforcement feel, as Bo was talking, they feel a little constrained. They feel worried about, okay, they're going to get called into internal review. Do you feel that politics have taken over so much and made the job so much tougher?
You know, not only has it made the job tougher, it's made it difficult to recruit individuals to come onto law enforcement. We had the issues with the pandemic where we couldn't hire for 2 years, and then with certain legislations that were passed, makes someone wonder, is it worth the salary, that starting salary, to lose their job or possibly go to jail? And, you know, their families are adversely affected. So it's very cyclical in everything that has occurred. And when you don't see the support, luckily in Suffolk County, since I'm an elected official, I can make my own decisions to support the men and women in my office the way I feel they should be supported, because I've been in law enforcement now, you know, almost 40 years. But more importantly, we have to support these men and women, these young men and women that are going through a lot. And that's why I spoke about mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and the high suicide rate over the last several years that are occurring in the law enforcement community.
Yeah, that's a big, by the way, you are the first African-American to be elected to a non-judicial countywide office there in Suffolk County. So bravo, too, to that. That's really
you.
fantastic. John, you know, one of the things I love on your show, and I've had the honor to be your sidekick sometimes and fill in there, you always end your show saying, truth, justice, and the American way, and talk very much about law and order. Why is that so personal to you, John?
Well, I grew up in the 50s, long time ago, the time when Officer Joe Bolton was on. If anybody's old enough to remember Officer
do.
Joe Bolton.
Now we know who's the oldest here.
And everybody respected the local police officer. Everybody respected law enforcement. And whether, being in Harlem or being in Spanish Harlem or Black Harlem or whatever, everybody respected each other. I mean, it wasn't until the 1970s when a lot of drug addicts were coming back from Vietnam, where we started having a lot of troubles. And then, we started going downhill. But you got to remember, there are certain people. There was also, at one time, 28,000 mentally ill in hospitals. They threw them out of hospitals, and they reclassified them as homeless, and they put them on the streets of New York. You can't have thousands, tens of thousands, I don't know how many there really are, of homeless and mentally ill people in the streets of New York. They deserve to be in hospitals being treated. These are the people you see in subways going and pushing people off the edge of the tracks. And between the violent criminals that we talked about before, the 3,000 violent criminals, and the mentally ill, for whom, you tell your local politician, for whom do the bells toll? The people that want to live in a civilized community and deserve to be part of a civilized community, or the 1/10 of 1% that create a horror for those people. And it's just, we want to live in a civilized world. And New York is the greatest city in the world. We deserve to be living in a civilized world. And I cry for our city. I love our city. And that's why I say to everybody, just whoever your legislator is, talk to them. Tell them enough is enough. And look, common sense Democrats, common sense Republicans. Why are the common sense Democrats scared of the regressive Democrats? Why? Stand up and say enough is enough.
Bravo, absolutely. To John's point, John, do you believe that the tide is turning? Because you look at some of the changes.
Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll let you know Tuesday, exactly. We'll be covering it. But Tuesday, do you believe, as the elections are approaching, and we see on the ballot, most places crime is either number one or number two. Do you feel that the sentiment, sadly, of what's happened to people like your beautiful son, Eve, and to so many others, that has changed it, John?
Well, ma'am, to be quite frank, I'm a federal law enforcement officer. I'm duly appointed to work for whoever is in power and abide by their rules and regulations and whatever legislative actions that they deem necessary to help better protect the public. I must work within those means. So at the end of the day, I don't get involved in politics.
Let me
Are you happy that crime's on the ballot, though? Are you happy that at least people are aware of it?
Violent gun crime is the number one issue affecting, I think, many of our communities.
Yeah, regardless of
And we
politics,
as law
right?
enforcement have to continually figure out ways to work within the means by which we've been provided. I, of course, work with any elected official to make sure that I educate them on the ways and means by which we can do that more effectively. I look forward to whoever's in power and being an advocate for myself as for my mission to better address violent gun crime. but that's what I do on a daily basis.
And by the way, I thought what was really powerful in the press conference that took place soon before this, everybody, they said, look, it shouldn't be a Republican, a Democratic issue.
I could not
It's an
agree more,
American
ma'am.
issue.
It's an
It's
American way
a
of
safety
life.
issue.
It's
I-
a New York issue. It's an American
It's an
issue.
American
it's not,
issue.
Nothing to do with politics.
Yes, it's just getting people who care about law and
110%.
order and to make your job as easy as possible.
Our job will never be easy because
It
at the end
won't
of the
be.
day, we fail to accomplish this mission on a daily basis because of the volume. But what we can do is come up with, good ways, good procedures to deal with it better. That's all
Absolutely.
I'm trying to do.
And
with
we need to
whoever.
do whatever we can to support you, too.
Yes, ma'am.
1,000%. And we're all passionate about making sure that our streets are safer wherever you are on the political spectrum. Before we wrap it up, everybody, I want to just make sure I go to each of you just to talk about what we can all do to make our mission safer, our streets safer, and also to the people watching out there. What can they do to get involved, to back the blue, and how important it is to respect and appreciate you? Because I see some of these headlines, I get so frustrated when I see law enforcement officers. Sadly, 2 Newark, New Jersey police officers were just shot at recently. As we know, thank goodness the suspect was apprehended. But the job, as you point out, John, and all of you know all too well, is difficult. You never know what stop is going to be your last, what visit is going to be your last. I think about, even as a broadcaster, I lost 2 dear friends. I remember their names to this day, John Burnett and Andy Nobles. And they were 2 officers, and I was just about to go on the air, and I had just done a story with them and gotten to know them, and they had been executed. And so they were just doing a routine stop. Every day is so important, and we must protect our men and women in blue, and they're protecting all of us, every single one of them. So what are your final thoughts, Sheriff, about how important it is? And for the folks listening out there, how can they help our great men and women in blue?
I think, first of all, take off your Met jerseys, your Yankee jerseys, put on a blue jersey, and support your law enforcement community.
Good idea.
But
And that comes from a former Yankee bat boy.
yes, that's correct.
A former Yankee bat
Oh,
boy.
is that true?
Yes,
I
it
didn't
is.
know that. Wow.
But more importantly, I would ask everyone, our community, our elected officials, and law enforcement, to sit at the table together and find a solution. And it shouldn't be 1/3 or 2/3 of that group, but all 3 come together and say, what can we do to make our community safe, make our law enforcement feel protected and also appreciated, and keep them safe.
And John, just from an overall perspective about what can we do to make the job as best supportive as possible? And do you feel that the public is doing enough? What else can they do to help you?
No, I think we're doing a great job. We have to band together as human beings, Americans, whatever nationality. We're all in this fight together. Okay, so everyone support one another and stop trying to separate and divide us. We're all in this battle together, and we're going to continue fighting the good fight every single day. Having leaders like Eve in the community that bridge that gap between law enforcement and the hard-hit communities is the way forward. But at the end of the day, law enforcement has a very important job. They are the torchbearers for those individuals that find themselves in their darkest point in life. We need people to help them keep those torches lit, and the community is where that comes in. These are men, women, fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers that are out there on a daily basis risking their lives to better protect the public. We are going to slip on occasion. We are still humans. Everyone realize that, take that into consideration before we start lambasting the law enforcement community for something that happens. This is an unforeseen threat a lot of times. We have no idea what we're up against, but we're doing the best we can with what we have. So keep that in consideration whenever you're dealing with trying to point fingers. Stop pointing fingers. Everyone's in this together.
Absolutely, 1,000%. And also, do whatever you can. When you see a law enforcement officer, say thank you.
Help pick them up.
Pick them up. Give them a cup of coffee.
Slap
I
'em
go
on the
buy
back when
tons
they
of
do
cups of coffee,
mess up.
whatever I can.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Eve, what would you like to say to law enforcement?
I would like to say thank you. Thank you so much. And I also would like to say, when a police officer gets killed senselessly, there's no one to support. You don't see a crowd coming out. You don't see anyone coming out and say, there's just no one. But when a police officer killed a civilian, they get sued. The whole world. But police officers are human beings too. they get killed while they're working on their way home. They have children. But yet they go out in the community and they risk their life so that people like me can be safe. And I do appreciate that. Thank you so much. We have to do it together. We have to come together and forget about everything else but protecting our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your courage so much. And John, what are your final thoughts, John Katsimatidis?
My final thoughts today on Backing the Blue. We are a democracy. The only choices we have is to vote every November. And this November, we're coming up to vote as Americans, as New Yorkers. And the big question is, whom do you trust to keep New York safe and America safe? Just look yourself in the mirror and look at yourself and say, whom do you trust to keep New York City and New York State safe and America safe? God bless America. Thank you. Thank you.
God bless America. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I just want to say, John, on behalf of everybody here and this day of Back the Blue, which we do every year, by the way. And by the way, it's not every year. Every day on 77 WABC, we
day.
back the blue. I'm very proud
Thank you for what
on
you
the
do.
show that we do at night. Also at 10 o'clock, I do a Back the Blue segment every single night. And it's my favorite segment. But we back the blue, and it's because of you, John, and also Margot, what you have done, and Chad Lopez, and all the great management here at 77 WABC.
We had a police athletic league lunch yesterday, and former Commissioner Bill Bratton spoke,
Wonderful.
and I could feel the pain in his heart speaking to from the time he was police commissioner, and New York City became safe, and where we are now. You could actually feel, as he's speaking, the pain in his heart.
And let's make New York and New York State and this country safe again. Bo, thank you for all your great service. Sheriff, what an honor to have you here. Thank you very, very much. John DeVito, thank you for all you do to keep us safe. We're so honored to have you. And Eve, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
your
you.
son is smiling from above.
Yes,
Thank you
thank you.
very much. And John, thank you again for all you do. It is such an honor that 77 WABC.
We all work together for a better city, a better state, a better country.
Absolutely. Thank you to
And tune in
77
to Brita,
WABC.
10 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, back
Rita.
the blue.
Yeah.
Back the blue. And also thank you to our sponsor, Ramsey Mazda. And remember, every time you see somebody in law enforcement, say thank you. And Eve, thank you. Your son is smiling from above
Thank
at
you.
all your incredible work.
Thank you so
God
much.
bless you. And everybody, God bless America. And let's end it like you do every day on the show. Truth,
Justice, and the American way.
Wonderful.